Reading for Wildlife. Written and illustrated by Zella, a project by Zella and friends. An elephant for breakfast.
Chapter 26. The Dinner Party. On Saturday evening, at an elegant home in Mayfair, London, owned by Sir William Silver, there was a grand dinner party with 24 guests. Sir William was the greatest silver merchant London had ever known. His table was finely laid. In the middle were the most detailed silver sailing ships, which appeared as a flotilla setting sail down the long table. 50 tall candles in silver candlesticks were burning, and their flickering light glowed against the shiny silver sides of the ships. The silver cutlery had been laid with immaculate precision. Fresh peonies crowned the table in bursts of pinks and whites. The distinguished guests were seated. Among them were the Marquis of Queensberry, the Duke and Duchess of Wellington, the crazy inventor Gertrude Walpole, rising politician Rachel Shipley, journalist Edward Taunton, and fashionista Marlene Mangalese. One of his guests was Sir Reginald Ashurst, the wealthy uncle of Uncle Cosmo's secretary Doris. There was a hum of good conversation. Quail's eggs, caviar, and exotic tamarillo chutney were daintily presented. At that point, the police knocked on the door. The butler answered and ushered them through to the dining room. An old gentleman was finishing his story about entering his favourite club many years earlier with a beautiful young Frenchwoman on his arm. The butler had politely explained that women wearing trousers were not permitted in the dining room of the club. She asked the butler politely to hold her bag, then slipped her trousers off, folded them, and handed them to the butler. "Please look after them. I'll need them later." She smiled and walked through to the dining room. Sir Reginald Ashurst was roaring with laughter. Then he began to regale the table with the secret of Audley Square and the lamp-post outside number 2, which has a little trap door at its side for spies to collect coded messages, when the police officer stepped forward to arrest him. The room fell silent. "Sir Reginald Percival Ashurst," the police officer said, as she placed a hand on his shoulder. Sir Reginald looked up. The smile fell from his face. "Yes," he said. "You are under arrest for the systematic exportation of ivory." Sir Reginald said nothing. He was too clever to admit it. A keen observer might have seen a slight tilt of acknowledgement in his head, though he wore a neutral, almost innocent expression. But the police now had enough evidence. Earlier that day, Patrick Plum and George Grimble had given a further statement. Sir Reginald Percival Ashurst was indeed the Blackbird. Sir William Silver stepped forward and spoke to the police officer directly. "I say, could we not just sort this out? I can vouch for Sir Reginald. I have known him since school." "I'm afraid that is not a matter of someone vouching for his good character, sir," replied the police officer as she started to cuff Sir Reginald Ashurst. He kept quiet. The humiliation was creeping over him like a thick fog. He realized the game was up, but his good friend supported him. "Look here, wait one moment. It just could not be, Sir Reginald. The man owns half of Africa. His family is hugely wealthy, you know. He would not and could not stoop to ivory trading. It's impossible," declared Sir William Silver loudly. But the police merely nodded as they led Sir Reginald Ashurst away. He said nothing. He kept a dignified silence to try to hide his utter disgrace. After a further extensive investigation, the police concluded that neither Cosmo nor Josephine had been involved. The whole illegal operation had indeed been run at night. An hour after sunset, the doors of the factory would be opened by Plum and Grimble. A night shift of illegal workers would arrive to package and disguise huge hauls of ivory. The ivory would be shipped the next day, alongside the legitimate business of coffee and cocoa. When Uncle Cosmo had announced that he would send his nieces and nephews a great chocolate treat, Plum had had the ingenious idea of hiding a shipment of ivory in an identical box to be shipped alongside the gift. Sir Reginald Ashurst was impressed. A whole tusk is worth far more than ivory pieces. His family fortunes had been faltering in recent years, and this would have been a timely source of funds. It was all but impossible to disguise and smuggle a whole tusk, let alone 9 at once. The 2 boxes were mixed up, and when the mistake was discovered, Sir Reginald was so furious that he was ready to do away with Uncle Cosmo. Uncle Cosmo would soon know about the ivory, and it would ruin the factory arrangement. But Plum and Grimble persuaded Sir Reginald to calm down and wait, as there was still a chance that they might retrieve the ivory before it was discovered. Then the factory could continue to be used. Plum and Grimble scrambled to London to try to fix it. Some time later, Plum and Grimble plea bargained and gave evidence in exchange for a lighter sentence. Their evidence was against the Blackbird, the mastermind behind the smuggling, Sir Reginald Ashurst. They also confirmed that Uncle Cosmo and Josephine were not involved in any way. Uncle Cosmo's secretary Doris had suspected and then known what was going on, but she had been too frightened of the consequences to say a word to anyone. She agreed to testify for Uncle Cosmo despite being very nervous about her uncle's reaction. She was given police protection to do so. The police kept her safe from her uncle and his bad business associates.
With enormous thanks to Deok Joo Rhee. Here is how you can help. Share the story. Adopt an animal. Visit when you can. Educate yourself. Donate to a conservation charity. To find out more about Reading for Wildlife, visit zellahunter.com or at Lady Zella Books, or follow the Reading for Wildlife YouTube channel.